Hey guys, this is Bharatwaj with Phone Arena. As you know, we recently reviewed the HTC Butterfly, and we have been having the HTC Butterfly in our labs for quite a while now. So, the Butterfly has one big advantage when it comes to new devices, and that is the screen. It's a beautiful Full HD 1920 by 1080 screen. It's literally a Full HD screen on a smartphone. So, that's the biggest advantage of the Butterfly. While on the other hand, we have the HTC One X, which launched at the Mobile World Congress in 2012 and had a very similar advantage. It was one of the first phones to sport a beautiful 720p screen. So it's 1280 by 720 at 4.7 inches. So pretty much both these phones are known for their beautiful displays. This one has a SLCD2 display and this is a SLCD3. So what are the difference between them, and in terms of phones, what are the differences between these two? So that's what we are going to see right now, and that's the comparison. Let's start the comparison then. So the HTC Butterfly, we find it has a weird name. I mean, Butterfly is a weird name. So uh, just for the sake of comparison, we think the One X is a better name between the two. So let's get to the design aspect of both these devices. The One X was very beautifully designed and still stands out in terms of smartphone design, and was really known for its critical acclaim in design. So as you can see on the sides, it's a bit curved and sits nicely in the hand. This was actually a bit of a complaint that the One X was not actually easily manageable, especially with the power button on the right top. So that's a bit of an unwieldy position for a smartphone, but it soon became widely acclaimed for its design and is definitely one of the best looking smartphones around. So the HTC Butterfly follows a similar design philosophy, but there are a few differences, in fact a lot of differences between these two. On the One X, you can see that the plastic kind of wraps around the display. On the top, you can see that above the HTC brand, the earpiece is inside of plastic. The plastic casing actually goes around the display, and that's how the One X is designed. On the sides, you can see that the display ever slightly curves down so that the plastic does not obstruct your handling of the display on the sides. Also, it massively reduces the bezel. While the HTC Butterfly has got a similar design, you can see that the glass completely dominates the front. So on the top, for the earpiece alone, you can see that it kind of comes into the glass, and that's about it. Otherwise, it's full of glass, ever slightly curved here, but on the sides you can see that it's pretty much flat. Unlike the nicely curved One X, the HTC Butterfly is pretty flat, while it's still easy to hold, and of course it helps that it is very thin, as you can see on the sides here. So let's get to the size comparison. Uh, the HTC One X has a 4.7-inch screen, so, and the HTC Butterfly has a 5-inch screen. So obviously the HTC Butterfly is going to be bigger. So just for the sake of a size comparison, you can see that the width is exactly the same, but when it comes to the length, the height, or rather, you can see that the HTC Butterfly is really tall. Like, I can even see the logo there above the One X. So it's pretty tall, and on the sides you can see that the HTC Butterfly looks extremely thin. So when it comes to the thickness, the HTC Butterfly is actually thicker than the One X, at least at the uh, thinner points. So also you can note that there is no camera bump on the HTC Butterfly, unlike the One X. So that maybe a little bit adds to the thickness of the One X, but since there is no camera bump, we can see that the HTC Butterfly is massively thinner than the 1X. And of course, there is no curve on the sides. So that's a bit of a difference. And regarding the weight, the HTC One X comes in at 130 grams, while the HTC Butterfly comes at 140 grams. So you might think that this is heavier. It is definitely heavier, but not at all noticeable thanks to the large surface area that it covers. So the weight is equally distributed, and so the weight is not at all an issue as far as we are concerned. So that's it for the design build comparison. The ergonomics, yeah, as we said earlier, the top right button on the 1X, as you can see here, is pretty much a design flaw. I mean, it's very unwieldy when you try to hit that button, but thankfully HTC has given some thought to it. While we may have preferred the power button to be here or here on the right side or even on the left side, HTC has gone ahead and put it on the top. As you can see here, the power button is on the top. So that's a bit of a tough decision, but seriously, rather than at the right side, it's far easier to reach the button in the middle. So that's a win for HTC in the HTC Butterfly. So about the feel of these devices, this is made of a unibody polycarbonate plastic. So you can see here it's matte gray and the plastic is very nice, but over the time it becomes glossy from matte. So that's a bit of a letdown, but on the sides it's completely glossy. So it kind of improves the grip, and the power button on the top is actually much more feely than the one on the Butterfly. So you can see it that the Butterfly has a different build with different build materials. It's a soft touch back here, and on the sides you have a little bit of stainless steel over here, and on the top you can see the same soft touch back covering the top, but the power button seems like it's made of stainless steel. But like we said, the 1X power button is easier to make an impression on your finger than the power button on the Butterfly. That's a bit of a flaw when you don't go searching for the power button, right? But at least the placement is fine. Now let's get to the biggest part of the comparison here, that's the display. So as I said earlier, the 1X has a 4.7-inch 1280 by 720 display, and it has a pixel density of about 326 ppi, whereas the LCD3 display on the Butterfly is a 5-inch one with a whopping 1920 by 1080 resolution and an equally whopping 440 pixel density. So kind of a big upgrade for HTC here with the 5-inch display on the Butterfly. But we have to note that there is not much really a difference when it comes to daily usage, and the pixel density is not really evident unless you look very closely. We did a test and we found that the browser, which displays a web page at fully zoomed out version, that'll be like a very small difference. The 720p display will have a very slight jagged edges for the text, whereas everything will look like on paper on the HTC Butterfly. But if you're going to read a web page 100% zoomed out on a 5-inch screen, that's gonna cause you a lot of eye strain. So not really any difference when it comes to the readability or the pixel density advantages. But the HTC One X has a little bit of extra brightness. Maybe the backlight is so aggressively reduced on the Butterfly, but we are not sure. But maybe you can notice or not notice, but at the equal brightness, the One X has a better brightness and the Butterfly is slightly dimmer, but we don't notice any differences. Also, if you can see in this picture, you can notice that the 1X display is slightly warmer than the Butterfly, but both of these displays are great at color accuracy and deep blacks. So even when you switch off the display, it is virtually black. You might be able to see this on the camera, but in reality they are very dark, and that's probably the advantage of the SLCD displays on both these devices. So that's about the differences of the display. You can check out our fully in-depth comparison of the display on our blog. So let's get to the other differences then. About the hardware, it's almost the same on the outer. Like the camera is almost the same. This is a 8 megapixel unit, f2.0 aperture and backside illuminated, and that's very similar to the one on the Butterfly. And both the image quality from both these cameras are pretty much the same, with the same sharpening algorithms used by HTC and the same ImageSense chip that can help you take pictures while taking video. So that's about the same advantages on both these devices. But on the front facing camera, you can notice that the camera on the HTC Butterfly is a 2.1 megapixel unit that can record 1080p video, while the HTC One X has a 1.3 megapixel camera on the front with 720p video. We don't think any video chat service is about to support 1080p soon, but you can take very nice self-shot pictures with the wide-angle lens on the HTC Butterfly. So that's about the cameras. What about the internal hardware? This runs on a Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Pro chipset, which is a quad-core great chipset from Qualcomm, and it runs at 1.5 gigahertz and it has Adreno 320 graphics. While the One X was one of the first phones to tout the NVIDIA Tegra 3 quad-core processor, which is running at the same frequency of the 1.5 gigahertz and has 1 GB of RAM, while this phone has 2 GB of RAM. They both come in 16 and 32 gigabyte variants, but there is one very important change that you need to know, and that is the micro SD card slot on the HTC Butterfly. So as you can see here, there is a dual slot, which means that you can use your micro SIM as well as the micro SD card here. That's the slot there. That's a major differentiator between the HTC Butterfly and the HTC One X. This was very the most highest complaint for the One X was the lack of internal expandable storage, and that's fixed with the HTC Butterfly. So that's a welcome change, and we definitely like that they have introduced a micro SD card slot in such a slim device. So that's about the internal hardware differences. There's not much different when you consider that both these phones are from HTC and both probably use much of the similar components. Both of these phones have the Beats audio, so that's a bit of an advantage over other smartphones like from other companies. Also interesting to note that the batteries have changed between the two devices. The One X has a 1800 milliampere battery and the HTC Butterfly has a 2020 milliampere battery. So that's a bit of an advantage for the HTC Butterfly, but since it's a bigger screen and of course of higher resolution, it might draw more power than the One X. But from results we have obtained, we find that the HTC Butterfly performs slightly better over the One X in terms of battery, but that might be due to a lot of things. This is running on, both are running on the same software, so it might be due to the hardware chipset that's inside both these devices regarding battery life. So software is pretty much the same. Both run on Android 4.1.1 Jelly Bean with Sense 4 Plus, and there is literally no differences between the software of these two phones. So that's about it for the comparison. You can check out the picture differences of the display in the post below, and there's a link below for that. And if you like this comparison, hit the like button and do subscribe to our channel for more videos like these, and we promise you more comparisons are coming soon. So that's it, and thanks for watching.